Common problem is that the receiver is full of milk pump is running, but nothing is moving. In most cases, there's a leak in the system, air leak, air lock, and three reasons are that the seal is worn out, the milk pump seal. Obvious solution is to change it, or the ball in the ball check valve is letting air pass by, and the solution is to change the ball, or the receiver itself has a crack. It happens very seldom, but it can happen. And if there's a crack, air is leaking in, the air pump blocks. By the way, if the ball check valve is leaking, there's a temporary solution. You could put water into the filter, and so now the water is leaking into the pump, and the pump will start running, and from then on you can finish milking. Milk is not moving could also mean that the filter sock is plugged up. Obvious solution is to put a new sock in. Could mean that the check valve on your bottom loading tank is installed the wrong way around, and that happens when you have a new milker or relief milker or whatever. And certainly after many years, if you're bedding with sand, the sand eventually wears down the impeller and the milk pump becomes weaker and weaker. And the solution there is also obvious: you need a new impeller. The Heritage washer, by the way, has 5 fuses right down there in the corner. One of them protects the contactor between the group and the pulsation system. The other one protects the contactor between the group and the vacuum pump. And then there are 3 more, one for the detergent pump, for the acid pump, and for the sanitizer pump. The system stops for no obvious reasons. That's the first thing to check. Open the box, look at the fuses. If a fuse is blown, the red light comes on. And the system would stop if the pulsation fuse is out or if the vacuum pump fuse is out. Okay, milk in the receiver, pump is not running. First thing, check the frequency drive. It's right there. If it's not lit up, the window is dark, then check the breaker for the frequency drive. Or the pump is not plugged in, common sense. We have the quick connect plugs there. If the frequency drive shows a fault code, it says FC-1, FC1, fault code 1, meaning that the pump is overloaded. So if a foreign object gets in the pump, a nut, a bolt, a stone, whatever, the pump overloads and the frequency drive protects the pump from burning out, and it shuts the juice down. Or the frequency drive is out of commission. In that case, disconnect the yellow plug, connect it to the other drive, and you're back in business. So after you change the plug to the other frequency drive, you have to open the panel at the bottom of the drive, 4 screws, and there are 3 small wires that go to the liquid level control. And you've got to unwire them from the frequency drive that's out of commission and reconnect them to the drive that you're now using. Milk pump not running can also mean that the liquid level control floats aren't working correctly. What might be the reason? There is a magnet inside the stainless float, this float right here. And if that magnet comes loose, then the float is inoperational, I guess you say. And so you got to change the float or replace the entire float assembly. Could also be that, although personally I've never seen it, that the float is stuck because some foreign object between the float and the float stick. Obviously clean it out and you're back in business. Milk pump isn't running could also mean that the frequency drive is out of commission. Take a look at the window. It may say stop, the word stop, for some reason or another. Somebody played around with it. In that case, just push run right there and 00 shows up and you're back in business. All right, something different. Here's a strange one. You're in the middle of milking and the system shuts down. everything stops, all the lights go out. Could be the obvious solution that the power has gone out, but assuming not, assuming the lights are still on in the parlor and in the milk house, what you might have, especially on a newer installation, is that the two control wires from the safety switch on the tank and the pulsation contactor, or for that matter, the safety switch on the tank and the contactor for the vacuum pump, were installed in the same conduit. We've actually had that 2 or 3 times. What happens is, if there is noise in one of the wires, the wire from the safety switch on the tank picks that noise up and tells the washer that the tank is not properly connected, and as to be expected, shuts the system down. The solution is you have to pull 2 wires out of the conduit or separate the conduits, and there has to be a certain distance between those 2 wires. Okay, you push milk on the heritage washer, but the drains don't close. As you know, there's 3-4 drains on the system and they don't close. What could be the reason? Open the washer, look for the MAC valve on the right here and push this little button. See whether the MAC valve is actuated. If you can push the button, the drains will close, and then you got to figure out, and that's an electrical problem, why the MAC valve did not close. But if the MAC valve is actuated already, then obviously you're losing air to the cylinders of the drains somewhere. And that could be a hose blown off. You'll hear that when you walk into the milk house. Or you could have a blow-by in one of the cylinders that actuate the drains. If that's what it is, you can still hear it, not very noisy, but take the cylinder apart, clean it up, lubricate it, put it back together, and there you are. So you push milk, pulsation starts, but not the vacuum pump. Go and check the frequency drive on the vacuum pump. There should be a readout, something isn't correct, it's an electrical problem. Or the other way around, the vacuum pump starts, but the pulsator doesn't start. Trace the wire to the contactor on the pulsation controller and see whether the lights are on or lights are off or fuse blown, etc., etc. Okay, so you're ready to milk. You go to the washer controller and your milk button is gone. Instead, there is a line of funny characters. We actually had that one single time on a dairy, and the dairyman didn't know what to do. He says, nothing runs and I can't milk. All you have to look for is there's a circle on the screen with an X in it. Just push that X and the line of funny characters goes away. Okay, we're getting ready to wash. You push the wash button. The system fills with warm rinse solution. When you have enough water, the system closes. Vacuum pump starts. You go actually through the rinse cycle, 1.5 minutes, whatever, 2 minutes. System drains. System opens up again for the detergent wash, but everything shuts down and stops. The system is then programmed to go through a short self-test procedure. So it goes through a cycle and starts the detergent cycle over again, figuring something got stuck somewhere. But let's assume that didn't help and the system shuts down again. What happened is that in the detergent pump, you have a stainless box on the wall somewhere. There's three chemical pumps in there, detergent, acid, and sanitizer. The detergent pump has an overload. Could be any number of reasons, overloads, whatever. One of them is that the peristaltic hose, the rubber hose, got bunched up, and therefore the motor can't overcome it, overloads, and shuts it down. The system, by the way, at that point is programmed to go to the very end of the wash cycle. The thinking was that if we don't get detergent into the solution, why continue washing? So the system shuts down, goes to the end, and gives you a warning signal that we did not wash up completely. Obviously, if the detergent pump is overloaded, in all likelihood the fuse blew. Remember we talked about that earlier. There's 5 small fuses, one of them will have a red light on. You're ready to wash? Push wash on the controller, but there is no wash button. The reason is obvious. You did not properly connect the discharge line from the group to your milk tank, and therefore the safety switch is not in the right position. The wash button appears when the safety switch is properly installed. The receiver properly fills with water, vacuum pump starts, milk pump starts, but the water is not moving. Problem is the same we had discussed earlier on the tape, and that is that the milk pump has a leak, and we discussed the solutions also earlier on the tape. And then finally, something that's going to happen to every one of you. System runs properly, milk pump runs, water is there, but no water shows up in the parlor. And that happens on every dairy. The takeoffs were not properly switched from milk to wash. And there's various ways to do that. In your case, may very well be the on button and then the manual button to manual. Okay, let's talk about exchanging parts inside the box. First thing, go to the breaker box, throw the breaker so its power is off. And then you might have to exchange the power supply. There are 5 wires, 3 inputs, they're clearly marked, 2 outputs at the bottom. Disconnect all 5 of them. Plug the new one in, reconnect the wires, and you're back in business. The other one is what we call the Pro Face, which is the TV screen. There it is. And there's 4 screws right here. Disconnect the 4 screws. And then there are 3 plugs. One there, and one there, and just pull them. Same thing, exchange them, put the plugs back in, screw them back in place, and you should be back in business. Okay, that's pretty much the story. I'm reasonably sure we covered everything. If we haven't, call us 24/7. Obviously, call either number on the screen and we'll try to help you out.